and welcome back to Tell Me Your Ghost Story. I'm your host, Kassie Askin, here with my co-host husband.
Hello.
Spencer.
Oh.
And today, it's time to play the game. Today, we're playing along to Season 1, Episode 2 of Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. You know the rules. I've watched this episode. I've summarized the stories, and I recap them to you, Spencer, and you, the audience at home. As we go along, you'll make your guesses on if the stories are fact or fiction. We'll find out at the end of the episode which stories were fact and which were completely made up by the show's writers. For the factual stories, I'll be researching the real facts behind the stories and sharing my findings. Spencer, how are your fact or fiction senses feeling today? Do you feel in tune with the show's writers right now, or do you think they're going to be able to fool you?
I think I'm going to get fooled. You know, there's a saying down in Tennessee, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, we won't get fooled again. No, I think it's more of like fact or fricked right now. I'm about ready to join a freak off. I don't think I'm going to do well at all. I think I may be indicted by the end of this episode.
All right. And with that, let's dive into today's 5 stories of fact or fiction. We live in a world where the real and unreal live side by side, where substance is disguised as illusion, and the only explanations are unexplainable. Will you be able to separate stories of truth from fantasy tonight? To do so, you must break through the web of your experience and open your mind to things beyond belief. We meet James back in the boring-ass soundstage, and he's standing next to a sculpture of a duck. He's really phoning it in, dude. He's like, what appears to be one thing, like this carving of a duck, might really be another. And then he like flips it to the side, like a carving of a rabbit.
Really? It's just a rabbit?
The duck's beak become the rabbit's ears. You can kind of see. It's a tale as old as time.
It's hard for me to imagine things in my mind.
It's a tale as old as time. I saw this shit coming from a mile away. He goes on to say, it's all a matter of perception. Tonight we present several stories for your entertainment, but we ask you to test your perception as you watch them unfold. Are these stories constructed from whole cloth, or are they inspired by real events? You have until the program's end to decide. And by the way, we reserve the right to change the names and details. So let's begin our little game of cat and mouse, or should we say, duck and rabbit.
Okay, that I actually really appreciate. I like the duck and rabbit. First off, cheesecloth. Second off, or what? You have until the end of this program, or what?
To show off to your family who's gathered around the television right now.
That would be so nice if we could sit down like a real family and watch TV together.
I'm one step ahead of you, though, about the cheesecloth. Have you ever heard the phrase whole cloth?
No.
Apparently it means from pure fabrication or fiction. In the 15th century, this expression referred to something fabricated from cloth that ran the full length of the loom.
What did he say last time about Shakespeare? The Bard of Avon? I was just about to say the limit of Des Moines. And it's like, that doesn't mean anything. But then I guess, does the Bard of Avon really mean anything to someone unfamiliar? Mm-mm. A rose by any other name. Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. Story 1, The Viewing. We follow James into another part of this dumb and boring soundstage. And he stands next to a casket. And he's all, a disturbing piece of furniture, isn't it? The last bed we will ever sleep in. To even view it empty like this sends shivers down many people's spines. But for others, it has no effect at all. Adam Foster was not shaken by the sight of a coffin. His family ran the Foster Funeral Home. There were always several of these in the downstairs parlor, usually with occupants. No big deal until the night of March 18th.
Okay, you didn't specify, but I'm just going to guess, or I'm going to hope it's like a mini Kiss casket. You know, like sometimes you're walking around Costco and like they'll change whatever they have like right at the entrance. And it's like, Kiss casket on sale. It's just like Gene Simmons in full makeup, but it's a casket. It's like, yeah, maybe your last bed is also the coolest bed you've ever had. Maybe it's a water bed. Who cares?
We'll have to see. We'll have to find out. So we launch into our reenactment, and we see a teenage boy, Adam, walking around a funeral home, among a bunch of empty caskets, and he's calling out looking for his younger brother, Brent. Brent pops out from inside of one of the caskets, scaring Adam. And Adam's all, come on, Brent, you know you're not supposed to be playing around, horsing around in all the caskets.
Is that a direct quote?
Approximation.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did he say playing around, horsing around?
that was me.
Okay. Okay.
They walk into the living quarters of this funeral home, which the family lives in alongside their funeral business. Their parents are kind of rushedly fussing about. The dad's all, has anyone seen my keys? And the mom is like, come on, Brent, you're going to be late for Billy's party. And mom and dad are going out to see a movie, and Brent is going to a birthday party, leaving Adam alone in their funeral parlor home. Just as the three are about to leave, the phone rings and the dad answers it. On the phone is a woman named Beverly, whose husband, Reginald's funeral, is about to take place tomorrow at Foster Funeral Home. She apologizes for calling so late after hours, but she had to make the request to postpone her husband's funeral.
He's not dead yet.
No, he is dead.
Oh, shit. Okay.
She says before Reginald died, he made her promise to bury him with his war medals. But with the commotion of his recent death, she hasn't been able to find them. The dad says it's rather late and he doesn't think he'll be able to contact everyone in time to postpone it tomorrow. Beverly says if Reginald wanted something done in a certain way, come hell or high water, he made sure it was done that way. The dad is trying to get her off the phone so they can leave, so he says, just keep looking for them. I'm sure you'll find them. I'll see you at the funeral tomorrow. Brent and his parents finally make it out the door, leaving Adam alone. There's a voice.
Adam is the youngest brother.
No, he's
brother.
the teenage.
Adam is the teenager.
He's a teenager.
Brent is the
younger brother. Yeah.
Who's like, how old?
Adam's like 16. Brent is like 10.
Okay. How old's the dad?
47.
How broad are his shoulders?
Pretty broad.
Okay.
There's a voiceover from Adam, and he says, I used to get the creeps when they left me alone, especially when there's a body in the chapel. But I guess I was kind of used to it by now. Adam's hanging around watching TV when there's a knock at the door. Adam answers it, and there's an old man standing at the door requesting to see Reginald. Adam says viewing hours ended at 7:30. The man pleads with Adam, saying he can't make it to the funeral tomorrow. He must see him tonight. It's very important. He has the medals his wife has been looking for, and Reginald has to be buried with them tomorrow. Adam, figuring he really must know Reginald because he has the medals, lets him in and leads him to the chapel where Reginald's open casket is being held. Before they enter, Adam has this man sign into their guest log. They then enter the chapel, and the man walks down the long aisle up to Reginald's casket, and Adam stays behind at the back. He doesn't want to go see the dead body. The man turns around and asks if he can have a moment alone, so Adam walks through the doors and exits the chapel. Adam is futzing around outside, waiting for the man to be finished with whatever he wanted to do with Reginald in the chapel. Several minutes go by, and Adam has had enough. He goes back into the chapel, saying, "You've got to leave now. My dad's not going to like the fact that I let someone in after hours." But he stops in his tracks. The man is nowhere to be seen. Adam checks all of the pews. The man is nowhere. Adam starts walking up to the casket and finds the bag the man was keeping the medals in, empty on the floor. Adam peers into the casket, and lying in it is the man. The man was Reginald. All of his war medals are now pinned to his collar. Adam runs out of the chapel, stopping at the guest log he had the man sign. Signed at the top of the page is Reginald Hannon. What really happened here? How could the stranger at the door have disappeared from sight? Did Adam miss the stranger's exit? If so, why did the stranger appear to be the same man who was in the casket? Was there an identical twin involved that nobody knew about? If that was the case, why did he sign in as the deceased? Or was this the story of a restless spirit who couldn't find peace until his mission was completed? Complete fiction or strange truth?
I want to go on record and say that I believe the viewing is fiction because I'm experiencing no romance from the viewing. Actually, what's really kind of taking me out of it is the turn into like the paranormal spook fest, factor faked, believe it or not, whatever, was so fast. It just doesn't have any of the realism buildup that I would expect or come to see from the other ones. So, not to mention the obvious one, which is there's supposed to be a dead guy in a casket and he rolled up with his own war medals to deliver to himself. Also, it happened to happen when the family is gone and only the youngest kid is right there. Like, that's super convenient. And the, I don't know, hubris of this woman to call a funeral director and say, like, you need to call off my husband's funeral tomorrow because I can't find the medals is like from the day before. That's like super dumb and weird. Like, who would expect someone to do that? I'm just going to say no. If you want more explanation, I can give it to you, but I think the answer is no.
Okay. I said fact.
No way.
I did. I'm going with fact for this one.
Really?
I feel like this is a pretty classic ghost story. The signing of the guest log is really giving me pause. It's giving like made up by our show's writers. That's like the little sprinkle that the writers put on top every time, you know, but I really like this story. It's believable to me, so I feel good with calling it fact.
That's really interesting. Well, oh, wait. No, now I remember why I hate the wife. If Reginald wanted something done, hell or high water, he would have done it. Well, that's really nice. You know, he's actually dead now.
He came back from the dead to do it.
Okay.
That was a little...
I get it. Yeah. All right. Okay.
A hint of foreshadowing.
I'm just like, lady, shut up.
Like,
you know, like, hey, I want this done. And if my husband wanted something done, he would have done anything. And it's like, well, I own a funeral home and I don't really give a shit because I'm not your husband and you're just paying me to do this. So you want me to just like wait until you can find something that maybe doesn't even exist? I don't know you, dude. I think it's total baloney. The guy seems fine. Thank you for your service is what I would say to him. I would shake his cold, dead hand and say, thank you for your service. I would kiss his ghost face and say, thanks. I stormed the beaches at Normandy. That's what he did.
Let's move on to story 2, the subway. James walks out in front of a large map of a metro system. He asks, how many times do your plans work out? Not just the big plans like career, marriage, and family, but the simple plans like getting from point A to point B. That's all Al and Anne Larkin wanted to do. They were going to take the subway from their apartment to a dance club. They had no idea that this simple plan would take them for the ride of their lives.
I have a good feeling about this one.
Okay. In this story, we meet Al and Anne Larkin. They're headed out for a rare date night. It was Al's first night off in a month. He really wanted to stay home and sleep, but Anne insisted that they go out. They live near a new subway stop in downtown Los Angeles, so they decide to try it out. Anne is so excited for their night out, and Al is barely awake, so they don't even notice that they're the only ones standing on the subway platform. They get into the subway car, and they notice the only other person in the car is a man dressed in a full tuxedo, and he's staring at them. They find this odd, but they joke about it and they brush it off. They stop at the first station, and no one gets on. The tuxedo man doesn't get off, and again, there's no one in the station. The car takes off again, and they notice the tuxedo man is now standing right next to them. They're startled, but they ask him, does this train go to Melrose? He responds, this train goes nowhere. The lights in the train car flash off, and when they come back on again, tuxedo man is gone. Now they start to get worried. Anne realizes, this is Saturday night. This car should be packed. Why is it empty? They pull into another station, but the train does not stop. Al thinks, I think we've gotten on a train that's been taken out of service. They get up and go into another car to try and find a conductor or another person on board, but every car is empty. The train starts to speed up faster than any subway the two had ever been on before. It starts jerking around and it feels like it's losing control. The two can barely stay upright and the lights keep flickering on and off, and they both are in full panic mode. Finally, the train car slows down to a stop only to take off at full speed backwards. After speeding backwards, the train finally pulls into a station and comes to a stop. Al and Anne sprint out of the train car the second the doors open, only to notice they're at the same station they started at. They rush home and realize even though it felt like the whole ordeal lasted hours, they had only been gone for 30 minutes. They're walking back to their apartment discussing the ordeal when they start to smell gas. It seems to be coming from their elderly neighbor, Miss Ewing's house. Anne starts pounding on the door, but no one's answering. She remembers that Miss Ewing kept a spare key under her front doormat. They grab the key, open the door, and go inside. Anne goes straight to turn off the gas, while Al goes to find Mrs. Ewing. She's passed out on the floor, and Al carries her out into the fresh air. She comes to and says she must have turned the heater on but forgot to light it. She's remarking how lucky it was that the two of them smelled the gas and saved her. A framed picture inside of Miss Ewing's house catches Anne's eye. It looks exactly like Tuxedo Man from the subway. He's even wearing a tuxedo in the photo. She asks, Miss Ewing, who is that? She answers, it's Edward, my late husband. He passed away 29 years ago. He said he'd always watch over me. So is this story possible? There are subway service trains that test equipment. They don't stop at any stations. They don't pick up any passengers, and they go at a higher speed than normal trains. Could Anne and Al gotten aboard one of these trains by mistake? But then where did that other mysterious passenger come from? And was he really a double for Miss Ewing's late husband? Or were the shadows of the subway playing tricks on their minds? Or were the riders playing tricks on us?
I love that one. I think that one's fact.
Okay.
I vote fact on that one. Yeah, obviously that one seems more realistic than the lady, demanding the funeral home to just bend to her will. Subways in Los Angeles? I have no idea. If somebody told me there was a subway in Los Angeles and it turns out there actually was, I'd be like, yeah, I guess I wouldn't know about that, even if there were. That's the only thing that I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah, again, they can change the time, the place. They do change the names. So,
yeah, subway in Los Angeles.
Yeah. I said fiction, honestly, based just off that. I know they can change the location, but I don't know. It was just a gut feeling. LA's subway system is a joke. I know they could have changed the time or the location of the story, but I'm taking it at face value. There's no way Anne and Elle actually thought that LA had public transportation that could benefit them in any meaningful way. And it didn't. It failed.
What if this was like, this could be a long time ago. These stories are like all, they really do take a lot of liberties, like a lot of liberties.
A lot.
Yeah, I think it's fact. I feel good about this one.
All right. Let's move to story 3. Kid in the closet. It's the closet story.
No way. This early?
I could not believe it was this early.
Wow.
We made it already.
That's actually probably good because then you're not like worried about it the whole rest of the show.
Yep.
Can I vote on which one it is?
Yeah.
Fact.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't want to spoil that. Let's hear it.
If you know, you know, but we'll find out later. Anyway, James stands in the dark with a flashlight held under his face, pointed upwards, and he says, "What were your childhood fears? The boogeyman? A monster under the bed? Or simply being afraid of the dark? Most of us outgrow these fears at an early age, but for some, the fears hang on longer. Take Danny Johnson. He's 10 now, but ever since he was 2, he's been afraid of something in his closet. And now that other kids have found out, he really has something to fear." We launch into the infamous closet story with the voiceover. It says, "This is a difficult story for a mother to tell, but years have passed now, so I'll try. My youngest son, Danny, was 10 years old and living in constant terror. His days were filled with threats and taunts from the kids at school. His nights were filled with terrible dreams about a monster inside the closet of his room. My older children had no sympathy for Danny either, and that's a memory I can't lose."
All right, I was able to play it cool until it was like even his siblings just thought he was a straight loser. Danny Johnson, you suck.
Could I have done something to change things? It's a question I asked myself over and over. But what could I possibly have done? We watch as Miss Johnson comes downstairs in the middle of the night and finds Danny sleeping downstairs in the living room instead of his bedroom. She persuades him to go back to sleep in his room. She opens the closet door and checks every corner, ensuring Danny that no monster is in the closet. She tucks Danny in as he begs her to stay with him, but she assures him that he is safe. She leaves Danny's room and turns off the light, and of course, the second that she leaves, the closet door creaks open. But we fast forward to the next scene. It's the following morning, and Miss Johnson is with her 2 older kids, Brian and Debbie, in the kitchen.
Brian Johnson?
Yeah.
From AC/DC?
Yeah.
And that guy that is paying to reverse his age?
Oh, yeah. Good
Both
call.
Brian Johnson.
Wow.
Debbie Johnson. I don't know who she is.
They're discussing Danny's fears. Brian thinks he's just being a scaredy cat, and Debbie thinks he's doing it just for attention. Danny is around the corner and hears the whole discussion.
Brutal.
Miss Johnson gathers all 3 kids and sends them off to school. It's now after school, and the neighborhood kids are gathering as Miss Johnson has another voiceover. Danny continued to live his life as an outsider. He wanted desperately to fit in and be a part of things, but he was labeled as a coward, the kid who was still afraid of monsters. But as painful as these memories were for Danny, he always knew there were worse moments to come. My older son, Brian, was becoming a part of that group that was tormenting Danny this particular day, a day that would change all of our lives forever. We watch as the neighborhood kids chase Danny around the block. He runs into his house and is able to shut and lock the door before they run inside. The kids are banging on the door when they decide to leave and go do something else, but Danny opens the front door and emerges with a baseball bat, and he starts swinging at all the bullies. They're able to rip the bat from his hands, and they drag him inside of his own house. They're taunting him, saying they're going to lock him in the closet. Danny is screaming and pleading with them to stop. They drag him into his room and walk over to the closet, taunting him, saying they bet the monster's really hungry. Debbie walks by the room. She's kind of a nerd, and she's all, this could have a lasting psychological effect on him. And Brian's all, shut up, Debbie. Danny breaks free from his brother's grip and says, if you're so brave, Brian, why don't you go in the closet? And he's all, okay, little baby, but you're next. They shut him in the closet, and he's faking screaming and laughing, but his screams start sounding different. They start sounding real. He's begging to be let out. All the bullies are laughing. Just then, Miss Johnson gets home and is like, all right, what's going on here? Everyone is silent, and she opens the closet door, and Brian's not there. But what she does find is a pile of Brian's clothes, the clothes he was just wearing that day. Everyone is confused. They tell Miss Johnson Brian just went in there. And Danny's all, I told you there was a monster. The next scene is the closet completely cleared out with policemen surveying the closet. They tell Miss Johnson that there's no way anyone could have gotten out of the closet except through the one door. They ask Miss Johnson if there was any reason why Brian would want to run away from home. She breaks down into tears as the voiceover plays. I couldn't hear exactly what the police were saying to each other, but I guessed what the report would read. My son Brian would be officially listed as a missing person, another young boy who ran away from home. Danny's brother was never seen or heard from again. What really happened here? Did Brian run away from home? Was there really a way out of the closet that nobody ever found? Or maybe this was a tragic lesson about being kind to other human beings, taught by a spirit hidden deep in a boy's closet. Or maybe it came from the deep recesses of the writer's imagination.
I think it's fact.
Yep. So we all know that this one is fact. That's a freebie for us, and we'll dive into the real facts of this story at the end.
Just really quick though, if somebody didn't know and we were like analyzing this as if we were just hearing it for the first time, because I don't know any details about this, I would have assumed, I always thought it was like they were playing hide and seek and this kid just disappeared.
Me too.
And when you were telling me this story, I would have assumed that Danny Johnson is the one that disappeared, because it sounds like he just sucks. So it's a little bit of a bummer that the cool guy brother is gone.
Yeah. Oh, if I didn't know, I would say fiction. I'd be like, what are you talking about? This is not real. His clothes being in a pile? Crazy.
Well, we're going to find out a little more about it because, like we said, they do take some liberties with these, but yeah. I just would never have guessed how it went down.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Story 4. Justice is served.
Big justice?
He brings the boom. James is standing next to one of those statues outside of courts, where it's like the lady holding the scales.
Yeah.
I've come to learn those statues are called Lady of Justice. Just some pointless information for you. But James says, after countless movies and television dramas, live cameras in the courtroom, and extensive news coverage, we sort of know what to expect in a court of law these days. At least that's what the defense lawyer in this next murder trial thought, until he defended Robert Miller and experienced the strangest day in court he had ever seen. We start with a voiceover from the lawyer. He says, there he was, my client. The manicure, the fancy jewelry. Why would a man like Robert Miller commit murder? By the way, his nails were just cut nicely. They weren't painted.
And no color manicure. Jerry Seinfeld style.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Nope.
I think people with manicures can commit murder. If you have a manicure and you're thinking about doing it, hey, it's an equal opportunity employment. type of thing.
I'll still expect you. I'll suspect you.
Yeah. Hey, Danny Johnson will be scared of you. That's for sure.
No client of mine had ever been found guilty, but this one was going to be tougher than most. The lady DA was making her case now.
Oh, you got a lady DA?
I know. I found that rather interesting. The lady DA was making her case now.
Got a manicured murderer and a lady DA. It's a real topsy-turvy world.
It's opposite day.
All right.
The girl is smart. The boy looks nice, huh?
The boy got a nail on him and the girl does put him in jail? Hey, give it to him, Bugsy.
Huh? Ruh-roh. The lady DA was making her case now, and I had to advise Miller to keep calm. The DA is questioning an employee from a yacht club. We learned that Robert had taken out a yacht with Elizabeth Warren, the deceased, who we learn was his business partner. The employee shares that Elizabeth and Robert seemed like they were happy and celebrating, and Elizabeth had a bottle of champagne she was drinking directly from. Robert, however, was sober. Robert returned a few hours later without Elizabeth. He said she had fallen overboard. He seemed upset to the employee, claiming he jumped in after her, but he couldn't find her. A doctor then takes the stand, stating that the cause of death was not from drowning. They found no water in her lungs. The cause of death was blunt trauma to the head. She was dead before she hit the water. Robert Miller, the defendant himself, takes the stand next. He seems very well spoken. He testifies that he and Elizabeth had been business partners for nearly 20 years. They were super close, not only business partners, but best friends. As Robert is being questioned some more, he looks over to where his lawyers are seated, and a bottle of champagne appears. He mutters, "I thought I got rid of that."
Hey, I'm thirsty, toots. Pour me up some of that bubbly. Put it on ice.
He looks back to where the champagne was sitting, but it's gone now.
What? Was it Joshua? Josh champagne?
Oh, that's wine, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's not really Josh if it's not made in Riverside.
Last night, we let the Joshua talk.
Last night, we let the barefoot talk.
Robert is being asked why he and Elizabeth were on the boat. He testifies that they were celebrating the acquisition of Quintel, a computer software company. He describes his feelings on that day as being overjoyed. It was the happiest day of their lives. He looks up in the direction of the back of the courtroom, and he sees a woman standing behind the seated crowd. No. We can tell from his shocked and frightened reaction, this is Elizabeth. Everyone in the courtroom turns around to see what Robert is looking at, and they all find nothing.
She's an agent at Flowtard. That's a callback from the first episode in case you guys haven't been following along.
She's coming to seize his assets and sell them all.
Yeah.
He apologizes, saying that this has all been very difficult on him. The questioning continues as his lawyer asks if he killed his friend and business partner, like the prosecution claims.
Can I guess what he said?
Yeah.
No.
He answers that he could never do something like that.
I was close.
His eyes dart to the right-hand side of the courtroom, and he sees Elizabeth again. He grimaces, averting his eyes. The crowd starts whispering amongst themselves. His lawyer, trying to save face, says, "I can understand how upsetting it must be to be accused of murdering your partner and friend of 20 years. I have no more questions." It's the Lady DA's turn now to question Robert.
Buckle up.
She asks, "Isn't it true that Elizabeth was going to start a new company and get out from under your shadow?" Robert answers that that's ridiculous. She needed me more than I needed her. "They're not going to buy it, Robert," Robert hears as he looks toward his lawyer. And Elizabeth's ghost is now sitting next to him. "They all know you're lying. Why are you lying?" "I'm not lying," Robert exclaims in response. "You would have been nothing without me." "What do you mean she would have been nothing without you?" the DA questions. He recollects himself, apologizes, and clarifies that they were a team. Elizabeth was the idea person. He was the sales guy. "It's all starting to unravel, Robert," Elizabeth's ghost responds. "No, it's not. I won't let it," Robert replies. The DA asks Robert who he's speaking to. Before he can answer, Robert's lawyer requests a recess. "This is it, Robert. No one believes you. They all know you killed me, and your next stop is the gas chamber." Robert stands up and yells back, "Stay away from me. I'm not going to the gas chamber." The judge is all order in my court and bangs her little gavel. Robert continues, I put an end to it, didn't I, Elizabeth? It was so easy. I got you, Elizabeth. Flash forward to sentencing. And in the case of the People versus Robert Elgin Miller, the jury finds the defendant not guilty by reason of insanity. Robert Miller is released to the custody of the state psychiatric hospital. Was it strained nerves or a guilty conscience that trapped the killer? Or did Robert actually see the woman he murdered? Prior to taking the stand, he seemed perfectly calm and collected, yet moments later, he was carrying on bizarre conversations with an unseen presence. Or perhaps it was all a clever ploy to avoid the death penalty. Fiction or inspired by actual events?
This is really hard because I actually do think this one could be real. This is a very believable situation. It's completely unprovable. No one would know except for him. So I think it'd be very easy to say this happened. And it could have really happened to him. Like he saw her and talked to her. What does that really mean to everyone else? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I've been insane. So I can vouch for he talked to this ghost. Whether or not she was there is kind of irrelevant. Just like thinking mathematically about because I do want to win. It would mean that the next one would have to be a fiction. For right now, I want to say that this one actually is fact, because if you were to take just this at face value, if somebody were to kill their business partner because they're trying to shaft them or just make their own money, they would feel really guilty. And if they had a panic attack or anxiety or anything like that, they totally could break down on a witness stand and go a little crazy. This is probably the most reasonable, even though of course of the one that we know is true.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the weirdest one.
Yeah.
This one seems the most normal.
Yeah. I felt similarly. I'm saying this one is fact. This one doesn't seem that crazy to me. And it feels pretty untouched by writers. In my head, if this was made up by the writers, they would have found her cell phone or a pivotal piece of paperwork that only she had access to.
Yeah.
In the courtroom. There's no gotcha.
Crystal slipper kind of thing that they would throw in.
Nothing to prove that she was really there. So
yeah, this is just a dude being nuts.
Yeah.
And then he got off from being insane yeah, okay. Worked out for him anyway.
Again, it could be a ploy to get away from the death penalty too.
I thought you were going to say that he caused him to get sentenced really harshly because he yelled that he did it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of weird. It feels like if it was fiction, it'd be you're going to the gas chamber.
Yeah. I mean, that's the gas chamber is an odd thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
What state that exists in, but yeah.
Or I felt if it was writers, they would insinuate more that he was about to get off with not being charged.
Yeah. And then because she kept pestering him.
Yeah.
No, I think that one's real.
Same. Okay. The final story. Story 5, The Tractor. James is standing next to a barrel of hay, and he asks us, you ever long for a life in the country? To leave the city behind for fresh air, the open space, the sounds of nature? Julia Randall was lucky to have experienced that life as a youngster when she visited her grandfather's farm. Those were happy, carefree times, but things change. Julia has grown up now. Listen to her story of a visit to the childhood memories that would soon turn to terror.
I'm happy to listen to her story.
We start with a voiceover from Julia. She says, on the ride from the airport to the farm, I thought about how loving Grandpa Buck used to be. But the stroke had left him without the use of his legs, and he had too much time to sit around and think about his dreams that would never come true. I knew I used to be his favorite, and I was looking forward to returning some of the love and attention he showed me when I was a child. The taxi drops Julia off, and she lets herself into Grandpa Buck's. She's calling out to him, and he wheels himself over to her, angrily grunting that he can hear her. He's not deaf. He had a stroke. She doesn't have to yell. He also yells at her for not knocking. She leans in to give him a hug, and he pulls away. He says, you're lucky I recognized you. I'd have shot ya. He continues, I don't need you here. I don't want you here. I get along fine just by myself. I have for longer than you've been alive. He wheels himself away. Grandpa Buck sucks. If it were me, I'd be like, I'm out. Story over. Fact. Done. Grandpa Buck completely ignores Julia until the morning. Julia is hurt, but Grandpa Buck always taught her to be a fighter. She's going to give this her best shot. She cooks Grandpa Buck breakfast and pours him some coffee. She's trying to ask him questions about the farm, and he's completely ignoring her. He takes a sip of the coffee, and he says it's the worst coffee he's ever tasted. She says, maybe it's just too strong for you, Grandpa Buck. Too strong, he asks. I'll show you strong, and he throws the coffee cup across the kitchen, and it shatters.
Oh my God.
She throws a rag at him and says, here, you clean it up, and she leaves the room. What Grandpa Buck doesn't know, what Julia couldn't bring herself to tell him, was that the bank was about to foreclose his farm. Without his knowledge, she found a buyer for the back parcel, a deal that would allow Grandpa Buck to stay on his land, but it also set off a chain of events that would haunt Julia's dreams for the rest of her life. I could not see where this was going, by the way, when I was watching this. I didn't predict what happened, but anyway.
Yeah.
Julia gently breaks the news to Grandpa Buck and says a realtor is on the way to check out the back parcel. He has someone interested in purchasing it. She begs him to at least hear him out. Grandpa Buck doesn't say a word. The realtor comes in, and Grandpa Buck immediately erupts and yells that he's wasting his time. He's not selling anything. Julia is able to calm him enough to hear the realtor out. The realtor explains that Grandpa Buck will be able to keep his house and the rest of the land. After hearing the realtor out, Grandpa Buck has another temper tantrum and the realtor leaves. Julia hands it back to Grandpa and they argue some more. Grandpa Buck screams at Julia to leave, but instead she angrily goes, I'm going to go put the tractor in the barn. Like, okay, girl, go off, do what you want, I guess. I didn't know that was like an option right now, but okay. She's everywhere. She's so Julia. She angrily storms outside to the tractor and Grandpa Buck watches her from inside. She starts it and is trying to get it into gear and move, and we get a glimpse of Grandpa inside. And he's like muttering something about the clutch. She didn't take the clutch off or something. So when it kicks into gear, it lurches forward and she falls off the back of the tractor. She hits her head and is knocked unconscious right behind the tractor. Grandpa Buck yells out to try to wake her, but she's not moving. The tractor begins to inch backwards because they're on an incline and Julia is in its direct path. Remarkably, Grandpa Buck stands up from his wheelchair and is able to stumble across the yard over to her, pushes the tractor away from Julia, and is able to throw the brakes on. He collapses to the ground, dead, as Julia finally comes to. A final act of love by a man who seemed to have no love left. Could Buck's paralyzed legs have found the power to walk again to save his granddaughter? There are stories of mothers who have summoned superhuman strength to lift heavy boulders, even cars, off of their children. Did Buck experience that kind of miracle? Or maybe his paralysis was only in his mind and he could walk all along. Or perhaps this story never happened. Fact or fiction?
Taken entirely out of context, I would be okay with saying fact to this one. In context, I'm going to go fiction on this.
Okay.
And here's why. I don't have any problem believing that Grandpa Buck got up from his wheelchair, but that was a whole lot of interesting buildup, genuinely interesting buildup to say, I'm going to go put the tractor in the shed. Like, dude, what the hell?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Like, all of that shit, the whole thing, like, he's so mean. He threw the coffee and there's a realtor here and they're screaming at him and he's buying the back parcel. I'm just going to go move this tractor in the shed.
Yeah.
What possessed you to do that? And then you fell off. And also he had to die because his legs worked so hard.
So it didn't like say like, and then he was dead, but like he kind of like falls back and then they come back and it says a final act of love. So it's like, I think he died.
Or that was just the last nice thing he ever did.
It could be, but then he's like laying there like with his eyes closed and like Julia wakes up.
Well, I guess she can just sell the whole farm and then works out good for her. No, I think that one's fiction. I think just story-wise, it doesn't quite sit right. The milk has congealed.
I said the same. I said fiction. To me, the aspect of the grandpa being such an asshole definitely seems like it was crafted by the writers. Like, just an add-on to further show how crazy it was that he was able to use his paralyzed legs. And him immediately dying, if that really was supposed to be the case. But this is kind of a difficult call because I've heard stories like this, mothers lifting a car off of their child.
Mhm.
So I do believe that this thing is possible.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with him doing that. I just don't think that this story is real.
Yeah, same.
I think it's possible that Uncle Buck or whatever.
I kept thinking Uncle Buck too. That's like from something, right?
Yeah, who's Uncle Buck?
I don't know. I kept thinking Uncle Buck, but it's Grandpa Buck. All right. Those were our 5 stories.
Okay.
Do you want to go back and review them, or do you feel good in your choices?
No, since that one was fiction, I think I'm good with
Okay.
my choices. I don't remember what any of them are, but I trust myself.
Okay.
And I still hate the villain of this round. Villain is the woman from story 1. The hero is Tuxedo Man from Subway Story. And
Jared Fogle.
Jared Fogle is the monster that stole the child in the Closet Story. And let's see, most likely to be hot when they get older.
Yeah, who's the diva?
The diva is obviously Grandpa Buck. I mean, that's a given. Best eyebrows, Julia. And yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
Most sleepy, Moo.
Aw. It's time to find out which stories were fact and which were fiction.
Get out the scorecards, please.
Story 1, The Viewing. Our first story was about the young man who was put in charge of his family's funeral home and encountered the shock of his young life. Is truth stranger than fiction? Did a story like this really take place? Yes, it did.
What?
So I feel like this is a trope. There are many stories passed around similar to this one, but I could not pinpoint one that seemed to fit this story. But in lieu of facts, I bring you a random fun fact about this story. The actors who played villain Beverly Hannon, the wife who calls at the beginning, and Reginald Hannon, the deceased, were married in real life and are the parents of Ron Howard.
Whoa. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, there's nothing online about it.
So that's as good as not being real.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Story 2, The Subway. What about the runaway subway train? Would it surprise you to learn that this story was inspired by an actual experience? It was.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So the facts behind this story, it seems to be somewhat similar to the story Pipe Smoke from the book Phone Call from a Ghost, Strange Tales from Modern America by Daniel Cohen, a collection of supposedly true ghost encounters. I looked into this book and read the introduction, and the author does claim that these are all true tales that he has collected and researched. In the Pipe Smoke story, though, there's no subway train.
Oh.
The encounter took place in Oskaloosa, Iowa in 1949. After World War II, there was a tremendous housing shortage in the area, so Elaine and her husband Hal found the only available apartment to rent in the area. It was a large old house renovated into tiny apartments that shared bathrooms. The only other apartment upstairs belonged to a widow named Patricia, with whom Elaine and Hal were friendly with, but they didn't particularly get to know her that well. Hal had to work weekends, which was fine with Elaine, but one weekend she feels uneasy and uncomfortable about being left alone. She decides a warm bath might settle her, so she walks down the hall to the shared bathroom. She notices the air was filled with smoke from a tobacco pipe. She looks up to discover a young man standing in the hallway whom she didn't recognize. He had curly black hair and a scar on his cheekbone. He was smoking a pipe. She should have been frightened by the appearance of a stranger, but she wasn't. The figure walked down the hall to Patricia's apartment. Elaine followed as if she was pushed by some unknown force. The apparition reached for the doorknob, then vanished. Elaine knew he was conveying a message to her. She knocked on the door to no answer, so she opened the door. She found Patricia covered in blood. She had slashed her wrists and was unconscious. Fortunately, Elaine knew first aid and used a bedsheet as tourniquets. She called her husband, who called a doctor to the house, and Patricia's life was saved. The doctor said that if Elaine had not arrived when she did, Patricia would have died. Patricia was grateful that someone had arrived in time to save her life. She asked Elaine why she came to the door when she did. She described the figure she had seen. Patricia grabs a framed picture from a drawer and shows Elaine her late husband. He had curly hair, a scar on his cheekbone, and in the photo, he was smoking a pipe.
Wow.
So it's a cool story, but like entirely different.
That's so weird that they didn't just use the real story.
I know, it's
like,
totally
why did they
fine.
just do that?
The subway train is like the main part of the story. Like that was like, to me, why I said fiction, because it was like, the subway is like a thing that's run by people and would involve a lot of people. And it's weird that no one was there.
It has nothing to do with the actual story.
It like takes a lot for it to be affected to the caliber that it was.
Uh-huh.
And that was made up by the show's writers.
Yes.
So like in reality, this one's like 50% fact.
Totally.
Like the second half. They're on thin ice with me, dude.
I actually totally agree with you. I think it's really stupid because that story was completely good how it was. Why did they just do the regular thing?
They could have
dolled up some backstory.
Yeah.
But still kept the setting exactly the same. All right, well, I was right. You were wrong.
Yep. Correct. Story 3, Kid in the Closet. What's your guess on the story about the boy who feared the monster in his closet? Could the idea for a story like this have come from a real life event? Yes, it did. So what we're all waiting for, the facts behind this story. There's one source, in quotes, that's referenced in any and all articles about the infamous closet story. It's an IMDb post that says the following. I personally contacted the man who collected true accounts for the show. I asked him where he got his proof for this. He responded to me with this. The beyond belief fact or fiction story about the monster in the kid's closet was based on an actual event that I personally investigated in Florida many years ago. At the time it happened, there was no explanation for the boy's disappearance until 2 weeks later when it was learned that he had climbed out of the closet through a ceiling panel and ran away from home. He stayed at a friend's house surreptitiously until the friend's mother discovered him hiding in the attic of their home and exposed the ruse. Unfortunately, the show producer responsible for checking out the truthfulness of each story was not informed until too late that the little boy had turned up at his friend's house several blocks away. Investigators who had tapped the ceiling and walls in the closet did not find the panel initially because the boy, who was age 11, had wedged 2 pieces of wood into place over it when he was in the crawl space above the closet.
Dude.
Yeah. And now
that sucks.
Yeah. While we can't call an IMDb post like 100% fact, this does sound believable and sounds like
massively more believable than anything.
Like,
I mean, that's like a great explanation.
This is the truth behind the story, but it is disappointing. There's a whole
Yeah, I wanted him to explode.
Yeah, I'm like, oh man, this sucks. The boy
Kid's
lived.
alive?
That
Where's
sucks.
the kid? We'll get the kid on the phone. No one can find the kid. All this is fake then.
But there's a whole generation of people walking around thinking that a monster in the closet ate some kid.
No, I don't think everyone thinks it's a monster. I think people think he just vanished.
Then people are walking around thinking that a kid just vanished in a closet.
Wait, so he left his clothes? He went to his friend's house naked? I don't think the clothes were in there.
I saw other people saying he took his clothes off to like better fit in the crawl space. Maybe like his jacket, but beyond belief, fact or fiction has blood on their hands. And James Brolin has blood on his hands.
On his mustache. He's got a goatee?
No, he's clean shaven.
Well, he's got blood somewhere.
Okay, let's move on. Story 4, Justice is Served. What's your verdict on the defendant and the ghost he confronted in the courtroom?
Guilty.
Did this seem like a clever tale crafted by the mind of a writer out to fool you? That's because it was complete fiction. It's sad. I wanted Elizabeth to get her revenge. Sad.
That's lazy writing from them.
Serious.
TBH.
Okay, story 5, The Tractor. Our last story was about the stroke victim who left his wheelchair to save his granddaughter's life. If you thought that this story really happened, we gotcha. It was fictional.
I wish they were more insulting with it, though. If you thought this story really happened, you're an idiot. You should go get your brain checked because you might have had a stroke as well. You might be in Uncle Buck's wheelchair because you can't use your legs or your brain. Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
You made it up.
Obviously. I really think they could have written the story leading up to Grandpa Buck's miracle in a much better way. I really think how they did it was such an odd choice.
Did you refer to it as Grandpa Buck's miracle, or was that their verbiage?
That was my verbiage.
Okay.
Just right now, Grandpa Buck's miracle.
Well, I was just curious who.
It's a good band name.
It's pretty, it is pretty good.
Album name.
GVM.
Album name.
Oh, dude, GVM's in town. Grandpa Buck's miracle. Most people can qualify their lives as before and after Grandpa Buck's miracle. So, and I'm not any different. What's the score?
Yeah, I want to count.
Who's buying dinner tonight?
So we both got 3 right.
Ugh.
Both got 3 out of 5, a 60%, a D. I'm remaining consistent. I got 3 out of 5 right on our first episode.
Man, I can't believe that Justice one was not
I know.
real. That just shows they have already given up on doing a good job, and it's only the second episode.
The later seasons are better. I think they get better writers. And obviously a better host.
Yeah, way better host, and I'm sure a better budget because people are watching.
Yeah.
I didn't even know they had this other host.
Yeah.
I have no idea what he looks like. Do you think he likes the taste of lamb?
He looks like he would enjoy a lamb chop.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't dislike him. Well, I'm gonna go put the tractor in the shed.
It's time to play the game. Thank you for watching and or listening to Season 1, Episode 2 of our Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction play-along. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, follow the pod wherever you consume it. Follow us on Instagram for photos from the show at Tell Me Your Ghost Story Podcast. If you're listening to audio only, there's video accompaniment over on YouTube. And we got some fun stuff going on over on TikTok at Tell Me Your Ghost Story Pod. If you have a true paranormal story you'd like to share, please email it to tellmeyourghoststorypodcast@gmail.com. Until next week, my friends, good night to all, and to all a good night. Bye!